On my 18th birthday, my family came together to reveal a shocking truth. I was adopted, and my biological parents had never wanted me. They made it clear that no one cared about me. Then my mom chuckled, saying they had only kept me for the monthly payments, which were ending today, leaving me without a home. I responded, "You'll regret this." My sister chimed in. "What are you going to do, Cry?" I simply smiled and walked out. That was 5 years ago, and I had been preparing for this moment ever since. This morning, my family is falling apart, pleading and reaching out nonstop. "Justin, son, please." I don't usually share personal stories here, but after reading many others, I felt compelled to share mine. It's wild, and I never thought I'd find myself in such a situation. If you think I'm fabricating this, I understand. I wouldn't believe it either if it hadn't happened to me. I'm Justin, now 23. This all began on my 18th birthday, but I should probably start with the week before. Things fell off then. My mom, Kristen, kept making strange remarks about how things were going to change soon and that I would understand what real life was about. She's always been a bit sharp, but this felt different. My dad, Ricardo, was hardly around, just sitting in the living room scrolling through his phone, not even pretending to care. My sister, Ruby, a year younger and not actually related to me, acted like she had just won the lottery, walking around with a smug expression, whispering to Mom and then looking at me as if I were a pest. I thought they might be planning a surprise, but not a good one. I wasn't expecting a party, but I thought there might at least be cake. I had been saving up for months, working various odd jobs, and I had plans to move out after graduation anyway, but I never imagined it would turn out like this. When my birthday arrived, it was just the 4 of us. No friends, no family, not even a text from my aunt, who always forgets. Mom prepared some dried chicken and microwaved vegetables, set the table, and we all sat down. Nobody said happy birthday. Ruby was on her phone, and Dad was just eating as if he were elsewhere. I tried to initiate small talk, but it felt like talking to a wall. After dinner, Mom said we needed to talk. She had this look as if she were about to deliver bad news. She told Ruby to put her phone down, and Dad finally looked up. I sat there, bracing for what was coming. Then she simply stated, "You're adopted. Your biological parents didn't want you. No one does." She delivered this like she was reading the weather. I stared at her, genuinely thinking she was joking. I had always felt a bit out of place, but I never expected them to say it so bluntly. Then she laughed, not a kind laugh, but one that suggested she had been waiting to say this for years. She claimed they only kept me for the monthly checks, and those were ending today, so I was essentially homeless. She said it was time for me to figure things out and be a man. Ruby began giggling, and Dad just shrugged, as if he had nothing to contribute. I asked if they were serious, and Mom rolled her eyes, saying I should have seen it coming because I was always too much work and never really fit in. Ruby piped up, asking, "What are you going to do, Cry?" For a moment, I just sat there, trying to process what was happening. I wasn't even angry at first, just numb. But then it hit me. All the times I had to do things for them. All the times I got blamed for Ruby's mistakes. All the times I was excluded from family events. It all made sense. I asked why it had to be like this, and Mom simply said it was business, not personal, suggesting I should be grateful they kept me for this long. Dad finally spoke up, telling me to pack my things and not to make a scene. I stood up, and my chair scraped against the floor. I told them they would regret this. I didn't even know why I said that. It just slipped out. Ruby laughed, calling me dramatic. I looked at her, and she just smirked. I grabbed my phone and keys, and Mom instructed me not to take anything that wasn't mine. I asked what that even meant, and she claimed everything in the house belonged to them, not me. I told her, "Fine, I don't want any of it." I headed to my room, and Ruby followed me, blocking the doorway. She said I needed to hurry because Mom wanted to clean out my room for her craft supplies. I told her to move, but she just stood there with her arms crossed. I pushed past her, and she shoved me back, but I didn't care. I grabbed my backpack, shoved in some clothes, my charger, my old laptop, and that was it. I didn't bother with anything else. As I was leaving, Mom stood at the bottom of the stairs, arms crossed. She said I had 10 minutes to get out or she would call someone. I told her I was leaving, and she just watched me walk out. Dad didn't even look up from his phone, and Ruby slammed the door behind me. I got into my car, a piece of junk that still ran, and sat there for a moment, checking my phone. No messages. I started the car and drove off, unsure of where I was headed. I ended up at a park I used to visit as a kid, trying to figure out what had just happened. I reflected on all the little things over the years. How Mom always made a big deal about money, how she would get angry if I asked for anything, how Ruby always got new things while I received hand-me-downs, and how Dad never talked to me unless he needed something. I had always thought it was just normal family stuff, but now it felt like I had merely been a paycheck to them. I texted a few friends, but it was late, and no one responded. I scrolled through my phone, looking for a place to sleep, but I didn't want to explain what had happened. I ended up sleeping in my car, my hoodie pulled over my head, trying not to dwell on it. The next morning, I woke to a text from Mom, telling me not to return, and that I was on my own now. Ruby sent me a meme about homeless people, saying, "Good luck." I blocked her. I began thinking about my next steps. I had some cash saved, not a lot, but enough to get by for a while. I had my documents, my phone, my car. I wasn't completely lost, but I was furious. Right then, I decided I wouldn't let them get away with this. I wasn't sure how yet, but I wasn't about to disappear. They thought they could just toss me aside and move on, but I had been paying attention for years. I knew more about them than they realized. I began mentally listing everything I knew, all the things they had done, and the ways I could make their lives difficult. I wasn't proud of it, but I refused to be the victim here. If they wanted to play games, then so be it. And that's how my 18th birthday went. Not at all what I envisioned, but I wasn't finished with them, not by a long shot. If you're still with me, thanks. I'll update if anything changes. I have a plan, and I'm just getting started. Update 1. I spent that first night in my car, and it felt surreal. I kept thinking I'd wake up from this nightmare, but it was just me, my backpack, and a nearly dead phone. I replayed the moment Ruby slammed the door behind me, almost proud of her actions. I thought about how Mom stood there, arms crossed, as if waiting for me to beg. I didn't. The next few days involved me moving around, parking in different spots to avoid being noticed. I went to a 24-hour gym to shower and used the library's Wi-Fi. I didn't want to tell anyone what happened, not even my friends, because who wants to be that guy? Plus, I knew if I confided in anyone, the news would reach my family, and I wasn't ready for that. I quickly noticed how quiet my phone was. No texts from Mom, no calls from Dad, just a few memes from Ruby about being broke or homeless. After she sent me a screenshot of her new room setup, bragging about all the space she had, I blocked her. I always suspected she resented me, but it was a shock to see it laid out so clearly. I started making a list in my notes app, noting everything I remembered about the house, the bills, and how things functioned. I had been the one to handle much of the mundane tasks, like setting up the Wi-Fi, fixing the router, and dealing with the landlord. Mom often praised me for being helpful when she needed something, but I realized it was only because she didn't want to deal with it herself. Dad never bothered with any of it. He just sat in the living room, glued to his phone, pretending not to hear when things broke. With a little cash saved, not much, but enough to survive for a while, I began looking for inexpensive places to stay, but everything was either too pricey or too sketchy. I ended up sleeping in my car for a while, moving around so nobody would take notice. I kept thinking about what Mom said regarding their motivations for keeping me. I became curious about what they would do now that the money was gone. I knew they weren't exactly rolling in cash, and Mom was always complaining about bills. One day, I drove back to the house to see if they had changed the locks. I parked down the street and watched for a while. Ruby was outside, chatting with friends, showing off her new room. I could hear her laughter from the sidewalk, but I didn't approach. I just observed for a bit before leaving. I began thinking about all the things I knew about them, things they had done that no one else was aware of. I wasn't sure what my next move would be, but I knew I wouldn't just fade away. I reached out to a few people, not friends, but family like my Aunt Lori. She's my mom's sister, and although we never got along well, she always seemed to care about me more than Mom did. I texted her, asking for a place to stay for a night. She called me immediately, asking what had happened. I summarized the situation, saying Mom kicked me out, and she fell silent. After a moment, she said she had spoken to Mom, but I told her not to bother. I just needed a place to sleep. Lori let me stay for a night, but it was awkward, and her husband kept asking questions like, "What did you do to get kicked out? Were you on drugs?" I said it was family stuff. The next morning I left, and after that, I began brainstorming what I could do. I knew Mom and Dad were behind on rent because I had seen the landlord's letters. I was aware they were late on the electric bill because I was the one who always called for extensions. I knew Ruby was using my old laptop for school and had no clue how to fix it if it broke. I started making a list of all the ways I could make their lives harder, but without crossing any lines. I wasn't going to do anything illegal, but I also wouldn't make it easy for them. I began by changing the passwords on the Wi-Fi and streaming accounts. Nothing too drastic, just enough to annoy them. I knew Mom would panic when she couldn't watch her shows, and Ruby would freak out if she couldn't go online. I received a slew of angry texts from Mom asking what I had done, but I ignored them. She threatened to call the police, but I knew she wouldn't. She never wanted anyone to find out what was really happening in the house. The landlord started messaging me, asking if I knew where Mom was. I told him I didn't live there anymore, and he sighed, saying he was going to initiate eviction proceedings if they didn't pay up. I was aware Mom would blame me for that, but I didn't care. She always said I was the reason for their financial troubles, but now she would have to figure it out on her own. I began talking to some neighbors casually. They had always liked me more than Ruby because I used to help them with their Wi-Fi or fix their bikes. I didn't share what happened, but I could tell they sensed something was wrong. One of them, an elderly man named Frank, asked if everything was all right at home. I told him I had moved out, and he nodded, as if understanding. He offered help if I needed it, but I declined. I started receiving more texts from Mom, becoming increasingly angry and then desperate. She said I was selfish, tearing the family apart, claiming Ruby was struggling in school without my support and that Dad was stressed out. I ignored her. I knew she was reaching out only because she needed something, not out of genuine concern. One night, Dad called me, which was unusual. He said they needed me to come home and fix the Wi-Fi because Ruby was failing her classes, and Mom was losing it. I told him I wasn't returning, and he hung up without another word. Ruby showed up at my place, screaming at me to come out. One of my roommates told her to leave, but she persisted. I eventually stepped outside, and she pushed me, claiming I was ruining her life and that Mom was crying constantly. I told her to leave, and she slapped me. I just stood there as she began to cry. My roommate came out and told her to go, and she finally left, slamming the gate behind her. After that, I started getting messages from Mom's friends, people I barely knew, urging me to be a man and take care of my family. I blocked them all. I wouldn't let anyone guilt-trip me into fixing their mess. I began thinking about how to make their situation worse without crossing any boundaries. I knew Mom was hiding money from Dad, so I sent an anonymous tip to his phone, a screenshot of where she stashed cash. I also knew Dad was behind on car payments, so I sent a reminder to the bank to speed things along. Ruby was using my old accounts for school, so I changed the passwords again to mess with her, too. I started hearing from more people. Neighbors saying things were getting bad at the house. Mom was yelling at everyone, Dad was hardly ever home, and Ruby was skipping school. The landlord finally showed up with an eviction notice, and Mom lost it. She called me, screaming that I had ruined her life, and I simply hung up. I felt good, finally in control. I wasn't just some kid they could push around anymore. I began to consider my next steps and how to keep the pressure on. I wouldn't let them off the hook, not after everything they had done. The last straw was when Mom showed up at my workplace, yelling at me in front of everyone, calling me a terrible son, and saying I was destroying the family. I walked away, and when she tried to follow, security intervened, and she ended up slapping one of the guards and getting dragged out. I realized she was desperate. So, this is where things stand now. They're falling apart, and they know it's because of me. I'm not finished yet, not even close. Final update. This morning, I woke up to over 20 missed calls and numerous texts from numbers I recognized and some I didn't. I initially thought something had happened, but it was just my family bombarding me with messages, as if the world was ending. I scrolled through the notifications, all similar pleas. Justin, please call us. We need you, son. Come home. There were also messages from Mom, long paragraphs without punctuation, rambling about how everything was falling apart and how I was the only one who could fix it. I didn't even open them at first. I just stared at the screen and chuckled. 5 years ago, they couldn't wait to get rid of me, and now they were acting like I was the last person on earth. The strangest message was from Dad, who hardly ever texts. It simply said, "Call me please." Then there were messages from Ruby, filled with emotions, first anger, then begging, then anger again. She even sent a voice note, which I didn't listen to, but I saw the preview with her saying my name over and over. I should go back a bit. After everything that happened, I kept my distance but never completely stopped observing. I heard bits from neighbors, Aunt Lori, or random people who knew my family. The story was always the same. Mom was losing it, Dad was hardly home, and Ruby was struggling at everything. I didn't care, honestly. I figured they would figure it out or not. But then the situation worsened. The landlord finally evicted them, and they moved into a tiny apartment across town. Mom started fighting with everyone, even her friends. Dad lost his car due to missed payments, and Ruby dropped out of school. I hadn't caused any of that directly, but I ensured they couldn't rely on me anymore. Mom attempted to get money from Aunt Lori, who called me asking if I knew what was happening. I told her the truth. They kicked me out, said I was nothing, and now they want me to rescue them. Lori sighed, expressing her fatigue with Mom's drama, stating she wouldn't help them, and that was that. Afterward, Mom began calling everyone she knew to seek assistance, but no one wanted to engage with her. She burned every bridge, and now she was stranded. I started receiving messages from people I barely knew, old neighbors or family friends, asking if I was okay. I just told them I was fine, not wanting to get into details, but it was disheartening to see how quickly people turned against my family once they realized the truth. The final straw came when Mom showed up at my place. I was in the living room scrolling through my phone when I heard banging on the door. I looked through the peephole and saw her there, hair a mess, eyes frantic, pounding on the door as if she would break it down. I didn't open it, I just watched her. She started yelling, claiming she needed to talk, that she was sorry, that she wanted her family back. My roommate came out and asked what was happening, and I replied, "Don't worry about it, she'll leave." Mom continued yelling, then began to cry, and finally came to curse me out. Eventually, she sat down on the steps, hiding her face in her hands. After waiting about 10 minutes, I opened the door and told her to leave. She looked up, eyes red, saying she was sorry and didn't mean any of it, that she just needed help. I told her, "You made your choice. You kicked me out, said I was nothing, and now you want me to fix your mess?" It wasn't happening. She tried to grab my arm, but I pulled away. She slapped me hard, and I just stood there silent. She began crying again, then got up and walked away, slamming the gate behind her. After that, the calls and texts intensified. Dad called, leaving voicemails apologizing and wanting to talk. Ruby sent me several messages, saying she missed me and was sorry for everything, begging me to return. I didn't respond to any of them. I blocked their numbers and social media accounts. I was finished. I reflected on why they had treated me the way they did. It was always about money. Mom never wanted me, just the checks. Dad went along with whatever Mom wanted, because it was easier than arguing. Ruby hated me, believing I stole attention from her. It was never about family. It was always about what they could gain from me. Once the money was gone, I was too. I know some will suggest I should forgive them or try to mend things, but I don't see the point. They made their choice, wanting me gone, and now they got their wish. I won't be their safety net. I won't allow them to use me anymore. The strangest part is that I don't feel guilty about it. I thought I might, but I don't. I feel free, like I finally escaped their control. I don't have to worry about their opinions, their needs, or what they want. I can simply live my life. So that's where I am now. My family is crumbling, and they're pleading for me to return, but I'm not going back. I'm done. I don't know what will happen to them, and honestly, I don't care. They made their bed, and now they can lie in it. If you're still reading, thank you. I know this was a lot, but I needed to share it. I'm not sure if there's a lesson here, but if there is, it's this. You don't owe anyone anything just because they share your last name. Sometimes family is just a group of people living under the same roof, and sometimes it's not even that. Anyway, I'm moving on. I've got my own life now, and I'm not looking back.